Welcome back to the Small Unit Leadership Accelerator. In this episode, I will tell you 4 reasons why the Platoon Training NCO might be a sergeant's job in your platoon. If you're wanting to know more about how to lead at the platoon level, you're in the right place. Thanks for putting time into making yourself a better leader. The better you are at leading platoons, the better we all get as a Marine Corps. If I had my way, all platoon commanders would show up at their first unit qualified as a training officer. Since I can't have that, I'm going to convince you to invest in one of your sergeants to become your training NCO. Training is so important, folks, and I'm going to tell you how this critical leadership role can be delegated to the NCO leadership of the platoon. We'll dive deep into the topic of the training NCO and the training functional area. We'll talk about the platoon's overall approach to achieving training and mission readiness and where training NCO's responsibilities lie. I'll also give you a 4-step cycle to make your platoon into a learning organization so you can outlearn the enemy in training, so you can outpace the enemy in combat. When I was a platoon commander showing up to my first unit, I had received many different types of military and leadership training, but I had no clue how to plan and organize a team to become trained. As always, unit commanders are accountable for developing the unit's viability to deploy and operate in combat. This means providing trained Marines to perform operations in support of the unit's mission. If I, as a brand new platoon commander, were to be left on my own to train my unit would be in serious trouble. Luckily, I had a team to share this responsibility, and I will say that we didn't get training right in that unit. We didn't get it right because we still had many leadership mistakes to make before we learned how to train. In fact, I didn't really get it until I was a captain and I got trained as a training officer. This was far too late in my career. I'd never be a platoon commander again. In fact, I was done being a company commander too. So do yourself a favor, attend the course to become a training officer, a training chief, or a training NCO at your earliest opportunity. As you assume leadership responsibilities in your new unit, it won't be much of an uphill battle to convince your leadership team that you need a training NCO. Giving this job to a strong and capable sergeant, you might get some skeptical looks, but I'm telling you, in so many cases outside of combat deployments, platoon training is mission accomplishment. Don't leave this part of the mission accomplishment to a junior Marine. The Marine you choose to be your training NCO should be one of your top bids for unit mission success. There's a big difference between sergeants as high horsepower training NCOs that bring a lot of capability to the platoon commander and corporals so junior that they can't be much more than a training clerk. Maybe your platoon needs both. But if the platoon only has a training clerk, so much training knowledge, planning, tasking, and documentation work will need to be done by the platoon's critical resources. Which critical resources, you ask? That's right, the platoon commander, staff NCOs, platoon sergeant, chiefs, and squad leaders. Being able to delegate the majority of the training functional area to a strong and capable sergeant is solid gold and a top recommendation of the Small Unit Leadership Accelerator. However, in the wide range of unit organizations, sometimes the platoon just doesn't have the manning to support this. I get it. Let's do our best. Before getting into the job of the training NCO, let's first talk about training as a platoon leadership function. One of the platoon commander's primary responsibilities is to provide trained Marines able to accomplish the unit's mission. The first thing to understand is that training as a whole, even at the platoon level, must be planned to incorporate requirements from across at least 10 authoritative sources. There are Marine Corps orders or instructions governing the annual training requirements, the Training and Readiness Program, the Unit Training Management Program, the Body Composition Program, and Military Appearance Program. There's PFT, CFT, martial arts, marksmanship, and water survival programs. This doesn't even include MOS-specific doctrine and equipment-specific technical manuals. This is a lot for a new platoon commander to understand and to be accountable for in the first several months of command. I'm going to show you a way to break down this mountain of training work into manageable chunks, most of which can be delegated. We'll start at the very high level, and then we'll get down into the weeds. First, set top-level objectives and expectations, supervise implementation, and be accountable for results. Second, read and understand all applicable orders, establish SOPs, set specific training objectives, and supervise execution. Third is to evaluate mission-related unit training readiness and deficiencies and chart the course to correction. This course to correction probably looks like an annual training plan. Fourth is to establish the platoon's quarterly training plan as nested within hires training plans. Then the fifth chunk is where we work on the individual training needs. We evaluate individual training readiness and we chart courses to correction. Also at this level is where someone senior conducts actual training to someone junior. Finally, sixth, at the lowest level, we need to operate the training management system, MCTIMS, to pull training reports, schedule training events, and report training completion. You'll notice that this arrangement of chunks of work in the training functional area are listed from most strategic appropriate for the platoon commander at the top and key punching administration at the bottom. Now that we've taken a look at the general training responsibilities the platoon commander is accountable for, let's take a look at the likely divisions of labor. Since every unit's organization is different, it's worth taking a minute to explore different manning situations. We're still looking at the same unit training responsibilities we just discussed. However, now we're going to look at each of these 6 chunks and see if the platoon can take an NCO and pull him or her from their daily MOS duties to serve in a dedicated or part-time training role. Some units simply cannot dedicate a corporal or a sergeant even half-time as a training NCO. In these units, the unit training work must be done by key small unit leaders. This means that the OIC continues to set top-level objectives and expectations and supervise implementation. The OIC and staff NCOIC read and understand all applicable orders, establish SOPs, set specific training objectives, and supervise execution by the chiefs or team leads. And 4, write the quarterly training plan. This leaves the subordinate small unit leaders, the chiefs, the team leads, etc., to do all of the heavy lifting to 5, evaluate individual training readiness, chart courses to correcting deficiencies, conduct annual training, as well as to 6, operate MCTIMs to pull training reports, schedule training events, and report training completion. If the platoon is able to dedicate a lance corporal as a training clerk, only this lowest level of work, operating MCTIMs, can be proceduralized enough to delegate to that junior of a Marine. The next better approach employs a dedicated corporal as the training NCO. At the corporal's level of experience, maturity, and independence, the pressure is taken off the small unit leaders of the platoon to establish, submit, and track the written quarterly training plan and operate MCTIMs. However, there's still a lot of energy needed by the OIC, staff NCOIC, and chiefs or team leaders to read and understand all of the orders, establish SOPs, set specific training objectives, evaluate unit and individual training and writing to upload to MCTIMs, and to plan and conduct the training itself. This also lends itself to having one squad or team much better trained than another based on the abilities of its own small unit leader. It's so much better to get a training SME in the platoon, which can provide uniform evaluations and training to a higher level of competence. Many corporals are not ready for this level of expectation. If this is the best the platoon can provide, then so be it. However, the remainder of this series will advocate for and describe the benefits of dedicating the first or second most senior sergeant in the platoon as the training NCO, at least half-time. He or she should have the maturity, experience, and technical subject matter expertise to take the majority of the training functional area off the platoon commander's plate. This means that the platoon commander and staff NCOIC still need to set top-level objectives and expectations, then supervise to ensure the training outcomes are met. Then, after sending the sergeant to the unit readiness planner's course to become a school-trained training NCO, he or she can take the heavy lifting of the platoon training off the leadership team's plate. The work that can now be delegated includes reading and understanding all applicable orders, establishing SOPs, setting platoon and squad level training objectives, evaluating current training, charting a course to correcting unit deficiencies, writing the training plan, and conducting/evaluating individual training for uniform training outcomes. If the platoon's training demands are really significant, it may be worthwhile to still have a training clerk to operate the training management system, but a sergeant can do this as well. With this list of general training functional area responsibilities, we can start to look at how we can delegate the work. This is the start of the discussion on how to fill the bill out of a training NCO. Here's what you need to know about unit training management so you'll understand why a sergeant is a better fit than a corporal. According to the Marine Corps orders related to unit training, platoons must track and report each Marine's training readiness. For as far back as any of us remembers, Marines wrongly thought that they were accountable to report each Marine is fully trained in their MOS every year. They don't. There's no requirement to achieve complete proficiency. What is required is to report training standards met. As a matter of fact, units are supposed to tailor in only the Marine's individual training and readiness, or TNR standards, which align to that unit's mission essential tasks, or METs. I'll go into this more in a later class, but for now, what you need to know about mission essential tasks is that Big Marine Corps knows exactly what it expects its battalions to be able to do in combat. Those are called 7,000 level tasks. Conduct a battalion attack, for example. Companies have 6,000 level tasks that help the battalion 7,000 level tasks. Platoons have 5,000 level tasks that help the company do its 6,000 level tasks, which in turn help the battalion's 7,000 level tasks, etc. They're nested. A platoon leadership team is in charge of its 5,000 level tasks that help its company, and it's also in charge of squads or sections using 4,000 level tasks, teams doing 3,000 level tasks, and Marines doing 2,000 level advanced individual tasks and 1,000 level basic tasks introduced to them in their schoolhouse, each according to that Marine's own MOS training and readiness, or TNR standards. However, you don't have to train all of your individual TNR standards. If they don't align to your unit's mission essential tasks, you certainly shouldn't be certifying that the Marine is proficient in something that he or she isn't equipped to perform. That would be a false report. As an example, a Battalion 0111 admin clerk actually has 111 TNR standards, at least as of 2017. However, no Battalion S1 has a mission that performs all 111 of those standards. Perhaps an installation personnel and admin center or IPAC may have a mission that performs all of them, but not a Battalion S1. So does the unit fail in training that Marine if they only ever perform a small fraction of the work described in the standards? No. Does the Battalion S1 have to send their Marines over to an IPAC for 9 months out of each year to learn and recertify their TNR proficiency? Certainly not. But should the Battalion S1 report MOS proficiency on the 10 or so TNR standards of which the Marine did demonstrate proficiency? Absolutely yes. This is how the system was designed to align to the unit's mission. So which TNR tasks are mission essential to your unit's mission accomplishment? What does proficiency look like in that mission essential task? Who is in the best position to assess this? The new platoon commander? The staff NCO who might have just come back to the fleet from recruiting or the drill field? A corporal who has just been in the fleet for 2 years? I dare say that the right Marine for the job is someone who has been doing this work in this platoon solid for the last 3 to 4 years. Let these other leaders contribute to the training, planning, execution, and evaluation, but this is an excellent chunk of work to delegate to a sergeant with 3 to 6 years of experience, someone best positioned to actually assess what training makes sense given the platoon's mission, equipment, and current skills of its Marines. Let's talk for a few minutes about evaluating platoon training so you can plan the right training. For years and years, training NCOs and staff NCOICs kept these physical individual training record jackets for each individual Marine. A training jacket is like a file folder with dividers that hold a complete list of training and readiness standards. An NCO would go through and theoretically evaluate whether the Marine ever demonstrated proficiency in each part of their job. This training jacket would then be signed off by someone senior in the unit and stand inspection to determine the unit's training readiness. This training jacket would then hypothetically be handed to the Marine to bring to their next unit to show their level of proficiency. First, this training jacket was often actually worse than a pile of garbage. It was more likely than not a false report. Instead of well thought out evaluations by the most mature and technically proficient leaders in the platoon, junior NCOs would treat written evaluations as a chore or paper drill needed to look good for inspection. They would pencil whip false reports of technical proficiency in every standard for every Marine, despite having never seen that proficiency demonstrated, and regardless of whether the unit was even equipped to perform that mission to begin with. I'd argue that for many highly technical MOSs, junior NCOs didn't even have the prerequisite proficiency themselves to judge the proficiency of others. And second, I've never actually seen this training jacket transferred to the next unit, not even once since I enlisted in 2001. Since 2016, that training readiness is required to be tracked in the online training management system called MCTIMS. Now that the training and readiness information is in the cloud, we know that the old unit can communicate a Marine's training readiness to the new unit. However, the brutal truth is that the training and readiness information therein is still likely to be a false report. Unit leaders still act as though they are under pressure to report a Marine as fully trained in order to reflect high unit training readiness. So they will still mark each Marine as technically proficient in MCTIMS, despite that Marine having never demonstrated individual proficiency in training or exercises. And in most cases, the Marine transfers to a new unit and, via the online training management system, that unit still can't get an informed picture of the Marine's proficiency, and it wastes a lot of time finding out. If you don't know the Marine's proficiency, then you can't send him or her off on a deployment until you do find out. This is inefficient. In many technical MOSs, a junior lance corporal that has been in the unit for just 1 year is probably not technically proficient, yet the record jacket will probably say that they are. If you can't send a Marine on deployment as an independent operator who knows how to perform the task without any support, then don't mark the TNR standard as achieved in MCTIMS. Be frank and honest about the improvement needed. Counsel the Marine. Identify the gap between where they are now and where they need to be as an independent operator. This is the leadership of the training NCO and unit leaders in general. We as a Marine Corps need small unit leaders to do better here. This is a real passion project for me. Expert knowledge is a superpower, and the training enterprise doesn't necessarily have the resident expertise to make experts out of Marines. It takes external education and training brought in from the outside combined with internal drive to learn. Therefore, until you make training and education a priority as part of being a learning organization, you won't have any superpowers to amplify your leadership or outperform the enemy. MCDP 7 does a really good job at convincing us that we need to be leaders of learning organizations. Essentially, it continually learns how to be better through training and experimentation. It learns about the operating environment and adapts to it faster than the adversary. A learning organization is agile. How can you make your platoon a learning organization? Here's a simple 4-step learning cycle. First, perform a mission task. Then, second, use self-assessment and subject matter experts to evaluate how you did in that task. The evaluation should shine a light on ways you could have performed better. With that evaluation, you should then, third, plan training that will help you do better next time. Fourth, obviously, you need to conduct the training. Get a junior leader to become the SME on that training is an excellent idea. Sergeants as trainers can probably bring more subject matter expertise than corporals, and when the platoon's mission is at stake, the higher the level of leadership is involved in the training, the more likely a why purpose can be made clear to the training audience. After this training is conducted, you are ready to go back to step one. Perform the mission task. Then continue the evaluate, plan, train, perform cycle again and again until you're confident you are better than the enemy in that mission task. Side note, learning is continuous. If you want to start this cycle at the planning stage, then conduct training, then perform the task, then evaluate, and then let that feed back into training, that might make more sense to you. Frame it however you like. What matters is doing this faster than your adversary. Throughout the next year, you need to go through the cycle many times with all the platoon's 5,000 level tasks, the squatter section's 4,000 level tasks, the team's 3,000 level tasks, the 2,000 level advanced individual tasks, and the 1,000 basic level individual tasks. There's a lot here. You can't focus on just one area. You can't have world-class fire team room clearing abilities and have noob level squad patrolling skills. Weave them together in whatever way makes sense for your mission. One more point on the value of having a senior sergeant as the training NCO. Sergeants, with the aid of staff NCOs and officers, can assess whether the platoon actually accomplished its 3,000 level, 4,000 level, and 5,000 level tasks. Sergeants should be able to read those TNR standards and draft performance evaluation checklists for the staff NCOIC and commander to review and approve. Then, with the evidence provided, you can demonstrate to the company and battalion S3 that the platoon is planning, executing, and accomplishing its unit tasks. This provides value to the organization and reflects positively on the platoon leadership. I bet there are corporals out there that are capable of performing this platoon evaluation. However, a school-trained training NCO with a sergeant's level of experience, knowledge, and maturity is much more likely to hit the X-ring on platoon training evaluation. Like many leadership functions, you get out of training readiness what you put into it. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't put expertise into evaluating training readiness, you can't identify your training weaknesses and you can't chart a course to correction. Good evaluations of current training lead to smartly planned future training. Well-planned training makes it easy and efficient to conduct the training. And by the way, the evaluator of the training is really well postured to conduct the training. Hint, hint. Regardless of who conducts it, once the training is complete, the Marines and the team need to go out and demonstrate proficiency in that task again, this time now with a full cycle of learning. Now that you've performed the task again, restart the learning cycle again with another round of evaluating, plan training to fix deficiencies, conduct training, and perform the task again. If you're leading a learning organization according to MCDP 7 or a warfighting organization according to MCDP 1, you know you need to learn faster than your opponent. Be a fast learning team. You have to do more than just follow Higher Headquarters annual training plan. You have to perform mission tasks frequently and adjust your upcoming quarterly training plan according to what you learned you need to work on. This is an area that a platoon commander and staff NCOIC should strive towards mastering. Outlearning the enemy in training to outcycle him in combat. This is so important, I'll say it twice. You should be outlearning the enemy in training to outcycle him in combat. However, the platoon commander or staff NCOIC could easily get consumed by this work. And by being fully consumed, problems could be festering elsewhere in the platoon. Equipment readiness, administration, planning. So delegate a lot of this platoon level training. Retain for yourself the work of setting top level objectives and expectations and supervising to ensure the training outcomes are met. Give expectations to your training NCO to make it his or her mission to use all of our training resources to outlearn the enemy. Then, with the sergeant's maturity, experience, and technical subject matter expertise, he or she can take the majority of the training functional area off the platoon commander's plate. Next, I'll give you my top 4 reasons why you should delegate your training NCO functions to a strong sergeant in your platoon. But first, I need you to read MCDP 7 Learning. You really need to internalize this publication. MCDP 1 teaches us how to think about warfighting, how to have initiative and boldness to attack your enemy's weaknesses, to observe effectiveness, and to find the next weakness and attack there, all faster than the enemy is able to find and attack your weakness for the first time. This is called outcycling your adversary. MCDP 7 will teach you how to outcycle your adversary in terms of learning. It teaches you how to be a learning organization, to develop mastery of your craft, and how to experiment to create new ways to undermine the adversary. I require all of my training NCOs, training chiefs, and training officers to read MCDP 7, and it's one of the main reasons I provide this training, so you can use knowledge to lead more effectively. With NCDP 7 being available in PDF form, it's easier than ever to take in this reading. You might not have experimented with this yet, but there are Microsoft Edge browsers that actually have an excellent PDF narrator function built in. This is my recommendation for becoming the smartest small unit leader possible in terms of military knowledge. Get a copy of this and every relevant unclassified PDF publication onto your personal computer or phone. With this PDF narrator reading this pub, do a circuit workout in your living room or wherever. While you're switching between push ups, squats, planks, and lunges for 30 minutes, have this playing in the background. Go for a run, do the dishes. Even if you only get 70% of the details, it's far better than getting zero details. You will be much better for it. Try it out. Find a good text to speech reader and develop a strength for learning through listening. This pub sounds good at 1.2x speed. Rapid acquisition of new learning can be our superpower if we can just make it one of the essential building blocks of our culture. Now, for the top 4 reasons why you should have a sergeant as your training NCO, starting with number 4. Simply, you employ a sergeant because your unit mission, situation, and organization allows it. If you don't have the people to do this, the officer and staff NCO leadership will just have to do all of the heavy lifting of platoon level training and delegate squad, section, and team level training accordingly. Still, get a corporal to be the training NCO or a lance corporal to be the training clerk. Reason number 3 to have a sergeant as your training NCO. A sergeant is likely to be the platoon's technical subject matter expert because your platoon has a small number of different MOS jobs. Then, as the trainer, he or she can give the best training, and that training will be consistent across the platoon. No one will suffer being poorly trained just because they had an inexperienced or underqualified team or squad leader. Number 2, as a sergeant, the training NCO has a lot more authority to direct training and hold Marines accountable for deficiencies. And the number 1 reason why you should have a sergeant as your training NCO, a sergeant is probably experienced enough to plan and evaluate the platoons, squads, and Marines' execution of mission tasks. Then, with guidance from the platoon leadership team, that sergeant can then plan training that charts a course to world-class execution of mission tasks. I'm not saying there isn't a corporal that can do this. I'm sure many corporals out there are doing much of this under the direct instruction of a staff NCO. However, if you are going to delegate some higher order thinking and strategizing on behalf of the platoon leadership team, you will get a lot more horsepower out of a mid to senior sergeant. As we close, remember, be 1% better every day. Read books. Develop empathy. Be physically tough. Work on your talents and make them superpowers. Use 360-degree feedback to identify your weaknesses and work on them relentlessly. And while you're at it, roast me in the comments. Give me feedback and make me better. I'm just here to help speed up the pace at which small unit leaders learn, lead from the front, and thrive. Hopefully, with your help, we can make this learning accessible to more new leaders and make our Marine Corps a better place to serve the nation. If you get value out of this small unit leadership accelerator, find someone else that can benefit from it as well and pass it along. Links to video and audio forms of the accelerator can be found in the show notes. During this segment, I gave you a lot of information about platoon level training, what types of training platoon commanders are accountable for, and how to break up that work into chunks that can be delegated. I talked to you about becoming a learning organization by iterating through the 4-step learning cycle of performing, evaluating, planning, and training mission tasks faster than your adversary. Finally, I gave you 4 reasons why your training NCO should, if at all possible, be a sergeant. Coming up next, 10 tasks your training NCO should be doing for you today. I will give you a set of roles, responsibilities, and expectations that you can give directly to your training NCO to make sure many of the platoon training functions can get done with minimal daily management by the platoon leadership team. Stay tuned for this and more billet expectations for the NCOs in a typical Marine Corps platoon to ensure that there is engaged leadership attention on all of the different functions needed to protect the unit's viability to deploy and operate in combat. Since you're serious about being a catalyst for your team's growth and success, I'll expect to see you there.